The tension between Saudi Arabia and Israel had been simmering for years, a constant source of conflict and mistrust. Last year, there had been a glimmer of hope as the two countries had tentatively reached out to each other, testing the waters of potential friendship. But that fragile peace had been shattered by a sudden and explosive fight, leaving both sides more entrenched in their animosity than ever before. Now, the United States found itself in the unenviable position of trying to play peacemaker between these two bitter rivals. Saudi Arabia, eager to mend fences with Israel, had presented a list of demands to the U.S. in exchange for their cooperation. At the top of that list was special security protection and permission to build nuclear power plants. The U.S. was understandably wary of granting Saudi Arabia such significant concessions, especially when there were concerns that the country might use the nuclear plants to secretly develop nuclear weapons. The prospect of a nuclear-armed Saudi Arabia was a nightmare scenario, particularly given the volatile nature of the region. Complicating matters further was the fact that Iran, another neighbor of Saudi Arabia, was also rumored to be pursuing nuclear weapons. The thought of both Saudi Arabia and Iran possessing such destructive capabilities was enough to send shivers down the spines of policymakers around the world. The U.S. weighed its options carefully, knowing that whatever decision they made would have far-reaching consequences. On one hand, they could flatly refuse Saudi Arabia's request to build nuclear plants, risking the ire of the country and potentially scuttling any chance of reconciliation with Israel. On the other hand, they could offer to build the plants themselves, under strict supervision and with stringent safeguards in place to prevent any illicit weapons development. Another option on the table was to offer Saudi Arabia alternative security guarantees, in the hopes of assuaging their fears and convincing them that they did not need nuclear weapons to protect themselves. It was a delicate balancing act, trying to find a solution that would satisfy all parties involved without inadvertently escalating tensions in the region. As the U.S. deliberated over their next move, the clock was ticking. The longer they hesitated, the greater the risk of a miscalculation that could have catastrophic consequences. The fate of the Middle East hung in the balance, with the potential to reshape the geopolitical landscape in ways that were impossible to predict. In the end, the U.S. knew that there were no easy answers to be found. Each option carried its own set of risks and rewards, and the stakes could not have been higher. The decision they made would reverberate far beyond the borders of Saudi Arabia and Israel, shaping the future of the entire world. As the world held its breath, waiting to see how the U.S. would navigate this treacherous diplomatic tightrope, one thing was clear: the road to peace in the Middle East was fraught with peril, and the path forward was anything but certain.